Thank you very much. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm very thrilled to be here to speak to you about the Mexican story, about how we envision the future from the policymaking point of view. So Mexico, first of all, an emerging economy with a huge diversity in economic, development, biological, and cultural aspects. I am one of the more than 120 million Mexicans that live in a territory 4 times the size of Sweden, sharing everyday life with 67 different ethnic groups, a history that goes back to 10,000 years, and a center of origin and diversification of more than 100 crops that feed the world today. We have been through challenges and ideas, so let me start just by pointing out again that globally, food systems are responsible for 60% of terrestrial biodiversity loss, the depletion of more than 60% of the commercial fish populations, more than 30% of degraded soils, and the overexploitation of 20% of the world's aquifers. It is more than clear that our food systems are not sustainable. The impacts of wasted food go beyond climate change. Consuming more water than Lake Geneva, or a volume 60% larger than Lake Vänern here in Sweden. Using a cropland, a crop area the size of China, and significantly impacting biodiversity. We do not know how much yet, as we don't have a standardized way to measure and calculate this, but we are going there as we have deep agriculture now in Mexico. We don't have the 2 degrees centigrade either. But we do know that as a part of a global society, we have failed hard on halting or at least slowing biodiversity loss, and we are talking about the biodiversity that is crucial for climate change mitigation and adaptation, for achieving the SDGs, as we saw yesterday in the wedding cake slide, and the same biodiversity that is the base of our food systems. Not any amount of clean energy will stop overexploitation of fisheries, for example. In agriculture, the role of biodiversity goes beyond providing food, fuel, or fiber goods. We must also consider ecological services being provided, from pollinators to soil fertility. These services ensure productivity, diversity, and healthy ecosystem that can be resilient to changing climate. So we need sustainable agriculture for sustainable food systems. And we know that for agriculture to be sustainable, it should integrate biodiversity from its planning stages. This by recognizing the social, economic, and environmental value of plant genetic resources and their wild relatives, ensuring their constant evolution through the in situ conservation, and so protecting the natural capital that sustains food systems. By ensuring sustainable production and consumption patterns along the entire food chain production chain. We have to ensure too the engagement of all actors, and not just to acknowledge, but to use the cultural heritage that has been feeding the peoples of the world through centuries. We are also working in the implementation of cross-sectorial strategies in favoring soil and land restoration over opening new land for agriculture, in promoting sustainable approaches to increase production, as well as food waste and loss reduction at all stages, including retailing. We need to design methodologies to monitor policies' impact and re-evaluation to gain accountability, and foster social awareness and involvement through education and capacity building. So this is our story too. In Mexico, besides being committed to almost all global agreements, the global agenda, the regional agenda that faces biodiversity loss, climate change, desertification, and promote green growth, our national planning has included for the first time sustainable production and consumption as a tool for economic growth. We have designed, with the involvement of all sectors, a national strategy and a national special program for sustainable production and consumption. What we do know now that we need for implementing these plans, we need to focus on natural capital conservation and sustainable use. We need to define criteria and to design indicators so policies and efforts can be measured, verified, reported, and that all of these ideas won't be grounded if all sectors are not involved, especially the business sector, and with great emphasis in small and medium enterprises. In Mexico, they represent 99.8% of the business units, generate 52% of the GDP, and provide 72% of the employment. So this is another story, breaking silos and moving to the near future. Our main objective for the upcoming Biological Diversity COP that is to take place in Cancun, Mexico this December, is to mainstream biodiversity for well-being. This means that conservation and sustainable use of biodiversity is integrated into the planning and operation of productive sectors. We know that for this to happen, biodiversity has to be valued, conserved, restored, and used rationally. Otherwise, we, the global community, will hardly achieve hunger and poverty eradication, climate change adaptation and mitigation, and sustainable development goals. As you know, sustainable production and consumption is one of the 17 SDGs, number 12, and is transversal to another 12 of them. So Mexico envisions that mainstreaming biodiversity will be possible through the comprehensive design and implementation of these elements. Starting with the selection of relevant productive sectors, agriculture, fisheries, forestry, and tourism. Besides focusing on the effective coordination between government agencies, we are working to fully engage the private sector, presenting challenges, facts, and opportunities at the Business and Biodiversity Forum on the upcoming COP13, to move from philanthropy to business planning that includes biodiversity considerations. To conclude, let me recall the 8 initiative and what has been said in this forum. We need to integrate knowledge and action. This knowledge, as was pointed out yesterday, should be applied, and furthermore, it should be available and understandable for decision makers in all sectors, for policy makers, for producers, for retailers, and for consumers, in a language that they can understand, as Jonathan and Claire said previously. Because even if it is unquestionable that consumer choices play a leading role in orienting production, so are economic systems and policies, including retailers and their decisions on what they want to buy and sell. As presented in this great forum, a good starting point is thinking and planning outside the box, facilitating synergy in order to achieve action that start and strengthen our production and consumption patterns towards sustainability. For these are the ingredients of our common future. Thank you very much. See you all in Cancun. Thank you.